Hey, welcome everybody. Just everyone's getting admitted to the room. We'll start in 1 minute here. Okay, welcome. I'm going to get started now. Good afternoon. My name is Justin Connie, and I'll be the moderator for this session titled Collaborative Efforts for AI Capacity, Building in Canadian Academic Libraries. Before we begin, we have a few housekeeping items, which you may be familiar if you've seen any of the other presentations. We have a code of conduct, which I will post in the chat after I do this introduction. We also have an email address if you have any questions or concerns. Please make sure your microphone is muted during the Q&A, which will happen at the end. We'll invite you to unmute. We also encourage you, if you have questions during the presentation, to go ahead and ask them in the chat. The session is being recorded, so if you're curious to go back to it, or if you have colleagues who weren't able to attend, that will be an option. Lastly, you can enable captions by clicking on the Show Captions button at the bottom of the screen. So now for the more important part, it's my pleasure to introduce our panelists. Amy Greenberg, who was appointed as the OCULS Executive Director in 2022 and leads the consortium mission, vision, and strategy, helping shape priorities for its technology and service activities. Janice Kung is a librarian, health sciences at the University of Alberta and visiting program officer of AI and library services at Canadian Association Research Libraries. Janice is a liaison librarian to the University of Alberta Faculty of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences and several departments within the Faculty of Medicine and Dentistry. She assumed the inaugural position of Carl VPO for AI and Library Services in November 2024, focusing on advancing Carl's AI initiatives, including developing guidelines and best practices for use of generative AI in library operations, as well as the programming for library staff, students, and or faculty monitoring key developments in the AI landscape. Mindy Thuna, Associate Chief Librarian for Science, Research, and Information, and Acting Director of the Gerstein Science Information Center at the University of Toronto. Mindy is currently the Associate Chief Librarian for Science, Research, and Information. Oh, excuse me, I just read that. Before becoming a science librarian in 2005, Mindy worked in public education and did fieldwork in paleontology and archaeology in a range of eclectic locations, including British Columbia, Texas, Kenya, and Israel. Our last speaker is Jason Bird, Director of the Library Services and researcher at Sault College. He's managed over 100 school libraries and worked as a business librarian and recently led the complete renovation of the Sault College Library. It's my pleasure to welcome Amy, Janice, Mindy, and Jason.
Hey, great. Thank you so much. I will get started. We thought today for our panel, we're going to go from big to small. So I'm going to start. I'm going to give you a perspective from a national library association, which is CARL, Canadian Association of Research Libraries. And I'll just set the context of what is CARL. It is a nonprofit organization that was established in 1976. And it advances the research enterprise, strengthens libraries' collective resource capacity, and advocates for a policy environment that fosters and preserves access to scholarship and knowledge. In terms of the CARL's membership, we have 29 Canadian university libraries and 3 federal libraries, including Library and Archives Canada, National Research Council Canada, and Library of Parliament. You're going to be hearing from Mindy very shortly, who is one of the member libraries in CARL. So we have been working very hard in trying to help with capacity building. In my capacity as the visiting program officer for AI, I am tasked with providing some training resources and guidelines on how do we navigate through generative AI. I'm going to be sharing 3 highlights on the progress so far on what we have been doing at CARL. In December of last year, we had a webinar featuring librarians from 2 Canadian universities that collaborated and created micro modules for faculty members on generative AI, and they are under a Creative Commons license for others to use. And this is one example of capacity building so that other libraries do not need to reinvent the wheel. They can take those micro modules and adapt it for their own institutions. The second activity that I like to highlight is that we are developing guidance materials on using generative AI for library activities, including evidence synthesis and library instruction. And the plan is to develop a series of these documents. Perhaps we'll have one on metadata, on archives, on accessibility, on scholarly publishing, that kind of thing. And those documents will be translated into English and French. And the third activity I'd like to highlight is, I guess, an informal activity is having ongoing dialogues with other library associations, including OCL. You'll be hearing from Amy very shortly, and with ARL. So we are in constant communication with the ARL CNI researcher in residence, Natalie Myers. And through these conversations, we do a lot of knowledge sharing, resource sharing, and finding opportunities for collaboration. Of course, there are challenges and roadblocks. For me personally, I can speak on myself that for my position in CARL, it is a secondment for a one-year term, and I am dedicating only 20% of my time, which is not a lot. It's only 1 day a week, and so I find that a struggle to have such limited time on working for something so vast, and AI is constantly changing. So I find that the time limit very challenging to navigate. In terms of the next steps for CARL, we are looking forward to collaborating with other associations, including OCL, on digital literacy initiatives, and also collaborating with ARL on bringing the AI Toolkit workshop to Canada so that we can tailor it to a Canadian audience with really interesting big picture themes, including strategic planning, workforce upscaling, workforce hiring and retention, and looking at copyright issues. So that's everything from me. And now we're going to be hearing from Amy, and you're going to hear about OCL.
Great. Thank you so much, Janice. So yes, moving from the high level national Canadian context down to one of our provinces, in my case, the province of Ontario. I'm the executive director of the Ontario Council of University Libraries, or OCL. And so we are a consortium of the libraries at the 24 universities in our province. Ontario is a very populous province. We serve about 540,000 full-time equivalent students. That's just the students, not counting the staff and faculty at our institutions. And I'm going to take a couple minutes to set the context for our particular collaborative capacity building, and then share with you what we've done so far, as well as some of the challenges, as Janice noted. Probably they won't be very new to you. I think we all face a lot of the same challenges, which is one of the reasons that it makes sense to try and tackle this kind of huge topic collaboratively. So OCL is a very collaborative organization. We started out many years ago in 1967 as a way to share general information and as a way to leverage purchasing power, do resource sharing together, those kinds of things. And OCL still does that today. But really, since about 2002, we have been committed as an organization to also providing shared library technology, infrastructure, and services. So this has been a commitment of OCL for quite a while to help support the research, learning, and teaching at our member institutions in that way. And this happens mainly through our shared technology arm called Scholars Portal. They are mainly based at the University of Toronto, and you'll hear from Mindy about our University of Toronto context there. So University of Toronto is one of our members, as well as being our service provider and the home for most of the folks on our technology team. So today, through that team, we provide 11 different services to our members. Notably, we have a lot of content services, so platforms where libraries can access the electronic content in all kinds of formats that have been licensed or purchased by our members, and also those shared user services, such as our very popular virtual reference platform called Ask, or Clavarder in French. It is a bilingual service, as some of our members are bilingual. And then behind the scenes, we also host replicated cloud storage through the Ontario Library Research Cloud. So just to give you an idea of the different scope of what it is that we already offer our members in terms of those technology and services, collaboratively speaking. So, and to say that we have a very successful and rich track record of working collaboratively in this way. So against this backdrop, we now, of course, have AI and trying to tackle AI and specifically Gen AI and machine learning across our libraries. So the realization came to OCL as a group, I would say in 2023, that really we were at a tipping point, and in terms of both realizing that there was a lot of promise and a lot of concern around adapting this technology in the higher education and higher education library context, but also realizing that it was very important to engage in this space and to have a voice and to develop our own technology there. So this led to where needed, adapt, adapt, create new as needed. So this led us to the launch of our AI and machine learning, or AIML, program just last year in 2024. And one of the key objectives of this program is indeed capacity building. We actually have 5 projects under this program. Capacity building is one of them, and one that kind of underlies everything that we're doing. The other 4 are grounded on some of those already existing Scholars Portal services that I mentioned earlier. So in terms of using AI to help enhance metadata for some of the content that we already provide on our platforms, thinking about ways that we could possibly enhance our existing virtual reference service, and also thinking about ways that we could use our existing cloud hosting service to host, to set up a pipeline for an automatic audio to text service. So building on what we already have and underlying it all is capacity building, where we want to increase education, training, professional development. What is it that our libraries themselves need, and what do they need in order to also fill the teaching role at their own institutions? So we are really just getting started. I guess I'm gonna do a little bit of the opposite order that Janice was saying, and start with some challenges, because and Janice, you noted, how difficult it is to only devote part of your time to something so big. And so we realized this would be the case very early on, and we said what we need is a full-time program manager, because we need someone who can really work 100% of their time in this. And that took a while. It took a while to get a hire for that. We have a wonderful program manager now. She only started with us in April. So we are only really beginning the capacity building part of our program. And because it had been so long since we had sort of been in touch in a consistent way with our members around this, we launched a survey to see what it is now in 2025 that people feel that they need. Where are they at? And we sent it to all of our member libraries. We encouraged folks to send it to all their staff to get as many responses as we could. We right now have about 250 responses. So we are actually going to use those survey responses to build and develop on what it is that we can offer as a capacity building program. And of course, we are also working with Janice and folks at Carl at the national level, so that we're not duplicating our efforts. So figuring out, where's the appropriate level to be offering these opportunities? Is it national? Is it within our province to our members? Where is it that we can each have a role to play and help our member libraries, have a grasp of this technology and understand what it is that all the different staff, in terms of both their roles and their personal comfort with technology, trying to hit all of those different points, which is very difficult even at a single institution, let alone a consortium made up of multiple institutions with multiple, with different focuses perhaps in what they're trying to do. So we're going to build on our survey, although we already have a couple of initiatives, small capacity building, small but mighty, I hope, capacity building initiatives planned for the summer, including a reading club that will include an interview with a knowledgeable expert on certain topics, as well as a reading for folks to get together and discuss, and the launch of a tooltips blog in connection with Choice from ALA. So those are just a couple things we're getting off the ground in the summer. So I talked about some of those challenges, so the next step is really to build on that survey to figure out the appropriate level to try to address the different needs across our libraries, and to really make sure that we keep on having that consistent and open communication with our member libraries, so that folks know where we are at. So I expect a lot of really great things to be happening over the course of the year. And with that, I will turn things over to Mindy to talk to us about the University of Toronto Library contexts.
Thanks, Amy. So I'm Mindy. As was already stated, I'm the Associate Chief Librarian for Science Research and Information at the University of Toronto. So for the context, U of T is the largest academic library in Canada, and it is the third largest in North America. I had to have numbers because I need numbers. So we have approximately, this is the 2023-2024 numbers. We have 16,500 faculty, 9,494 staff members. And the reason I'm very specific is the 494 are the library staff members. And we have 168 librarians. We have 40 libraries across 3 campuses, and the student numbers in the fall of 2023-2024, we had 99,794, that's undergrads and grads across the 3 campuses, with approximately 68,450 undergrads, 400 at the downtown campus, of which 48,000 are undergrad and 20,000 are grad. So the reason I want you to have the numbers is because if I'm giving you context, you kind of need to know what we're dealing with. In terms of the things going on, this is still context, but this is the AI stuff that's going on at U of T. We have a provostial advisor on artificial intelligence who's been leading a task force, which is composed of working groups, which were teaching and learning, research, student services, operations and planning, people strategy and administration, technology and data governance, and then the libraries, all of which were feeding into the larger piece. We had members from the library, so librarians on all of these working groups, as well as then feeding back into the advisories group. The library advisory group is then composed of response teams covering licensing and copyright, user services, technology. We have someone from OCL who comes to let us know what's happening at OCL, and also the UTL community of practice. So within that context, now I'll talk about a little bit of what, the capacity building part of this. So what I want to focus on is really more about the capacity building for everybody. So staff and librarians rather than the faculty and students, because we have different things happening depending on which piece you're looking at. So to date, what we've done is the individual science libraries and other libraries as well, but I know the science library is best. We've run 2 different events for staff. One was for all the science library staff to let people just play with the tools. And it was just various tools, some were licensed, some not, just to get people more comfortable. We did a similar thing with our local health science information consortium, which is the health libraries, so from the hospitals, with our health science libraries, again, just getting people introduced and playing with the tools. What we've also done is the community of practice has a place where people can just add documents that everyone might be interested in. But we've also run a series of different events to try to, events is the wrong word, but different activities, I guess is better, to try to help get people interested in talking around the various tools. So one of the things that we did is we looked for volunteers across the system to take courses that already existed and then did a facilitated learning session. We'd done this before a couple years ago with the stuff that came, the AI 99 out of Finland, and it had worked extremely well. And so what we had was 2 leaders, and everyone would just go and work separately on going through the courses, and then they would meet to discuss the results. So we did 2 of those this year. One was on prompt engineering, and the other one was on advanced data analysis. We also took workshops that either already existed or interest had been flagged, and we ran them for anyone who was available to come. And if they were full, then we would just keep running them. So with that, we did 2 on Python, and we did 1 so far on, oh my gosh, I've just forgotten what it was called. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Sorry. I just went completely blank on what the other one was on. But it was basically just another tool that we knew there was a lot of interest in. And what we wanted, and it was so well attended that we are going to be offering it again because there was just so much interest. Now, the problem is that we've run into, oh, and I forgot, we're also running shortly a lightning talk where people can talk about how they're using AI in their work and what they're doing around it. So the good, the bad, and the ugly. The interest is there. There's no question about that. The problem is the interest is often from a fairly small, regular group of people and not necessarily all of the 700 people that we're trying to build capacity for. On top of that, the unionized staff, so that's the 494 people, they either don't have time, and sometimes they have a lot of concerns that they won't be allowed to attend. because if they're interested, but it's not necessarily directly related to their job, this came up especially with the Python workshops. They felt that they wouldn't even want to ask because they would never be allowed to go. So this is something I'm trying to work on, because I actually think getting people to be less afraid of this is actually more important than having direct immediately being able to see how it relates to the job someone's doing. So this is sort of a work in progress piece. Another one is getting the COP a little better organized. A lot of the activities we ran this year were because we had one person who really pushed them. And what I'm trying to do is get more people across the system involved, so we have more people getting, working on the ideas, getting things out there, so we can generate more interest across everybody. But not everybody. What I'm finding is that a lot of the people who are very engaged don't always have the patience to wait for the people that are taking longer to get there. And this is difficult for capacity building, because rather than having it be a system where you have people helping each other, some people are so far along that they just have no time or interest in sort of understanding that there are people who are going to need a little more of a push or a little more hand holding, or even just a little more of a conversation. So they're like, oh, I see. I need to do that as well. As well, building into all this is, of course, the fear of the unknown, the sustainability issues, the ethical issues, figuring out how to address those and also raise them. So we're having conversations about that, because that's been a bit of a barrier for some people getting involved with this. For the librarians, what I've noticed is their building of the capacity is often tied to what their faculty and students are requesting, rather than their own interests and their own experimentation. So I'm trying to break that down a bit to see if there's ways to kind of do both, so they can still explore and bring to the table, not just waiting for what other people are asking. And finally, the last thing I was going to say was for the other staff, making sure finding the time and relationship to their role pieces, those barriers, trying to remove them so that they're not as much of an issue. That's it for me. Do we know if Jason is here?
I think at the moment we are troubleshooting this. So I think maybe what we could do is everyone's done presenting is maybe see if there's any Q&A and then give it one more shot to see if we can get Jason on.
Okay. Sounds good. We have our colleague from the Ontario colleges who is meant to be joining us and experiencing technical difficulties.
Great. So again, if you have any questions, you can post them in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand, we can go ahead and use that system as well and go ahead and call on you.
And if you don't have questions, but you want to share some of the capacity building stuff that you're doing, I think that would also be of interest to all of us to hear, because we're still, we're at different stages of it, but we're always really interested in hearing kind of what else is going on.
Yes. Or I also have a question for you, Mindy, if nobody else has, if no one else has questions, or to start us off on questions.
All right, Amy, I'm ready.
Okay. And maybe this is not a question that is, it's not an easy question to answer. None of them are, I think. But so you mentioned, yeah. So you mentioned, and I think I'm sure we're all, finding this or recognizing that there is, of course, there is a wide range, right, of where people are at in there, and what do we mean by capacity building, and focusing on the folks who already. Oh, and there's Jason. Okay, well, I'll just finish my question. Maybe we could answer it after, or I'll put it in the chat. But basically my question is, have you thought about then having sort of different experiences or different activities to try to target those folks who are like maybe just getting their feet wet, not really sure about AI, versus things that are tailored more for those people who are like, 5 steps ahead already and want to know the specifics of like prompt engineering or how to use specific tools already in their jobs?
I can actually answer it fairly quickly, because one of the reasons we've had the different kinds of offerings, like the asynchronous versus the workshops versus just sort of having articles there, to having sort of like play events where people get to play, is to actually address it. So it's different areas and different focal points. But it's also so that people with different levels have things available for them at the various different levels. So it's a great question, but that's actually why we didn't just go with here's one thing we're doing, but here's a whole bunch of things we're doing, so that you can see yourself and what you want or need in all the different things. And I mean, I only talked about the science library. We have stuff happening across the system in a lot of different libraries at all the levels. Anyway, Jason.
Thank you. Jason's here.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
We can.
Okay, great. Oh, thank God. Okay. Hi, everybody. Hi, Amy. Hi, Mindy. Hi, Janice. And thank you, Justin. We figured it out. So one of my amazing staff came over and just almost looked at me like, this is why you're a director. Almost like, yeah, because I have no clue. So he figured it out very fast for me. So thanks everyone for your patience. Is it my turn or is it we go on to the next person?
You're on. Yep. Everyone's
Oh,
presented.
Okay, you're on. No time to think. All right. Okay. Forgive me while I look at my notes and I sort of look at the screen. But Sault College is a community college with programs that range from trades to honors degrees. Sault Ste. Marie is a remote northern city in Canada. But when I say remote northern city in Canada, you have to take that with a grain of salt because remote can be very remote. We're considered remote in Ontario, but in the rest of Canada, no. So we are north of Michigan, if that helps anyone that's in the States. Those in Canada, you should know where Sault Ste. Marie is. You can't miss it because you have to travel on the Trans-Canada to get across the country through our town. So let's see here. So we're 4 hours from another major city and 10 hours from Toronto. So Sault College has various resources for students that incorporate AI, such as student program advising, peer tutoring. So we have a peer tutoring program that assesses it's a peer tutoring program that I actually used to run up until a year and a half ago, and moved over to student services, which was a better fit. But it worked really well. But one thing they've done recently is added AI. So peer tutoring does your average subject, that kind of thing, where come from math tutoring or chem tutoring, whatever it may be. But we also do specific test tutoring, right? So they're looking at, we have a leaf test where our natural environment students literally have to know every leaf out there. And they've got fields, kitty corner to us is forest. And they have to go out there and actually see this stuff. And it's pretty amazing. They have to know it in English and in Latin. So I have not heard yet if anyone's used AI on that one, but that is a very, very hard test. So they have a specific peer tutoring just on that. One thing though, I would say that we haven't really, sorry, I meant to jump in the Right Place too. The Right Place is a system run by the communications faculty that, of course, many other schools have the same thing, where they assist students in how to write. And they're looking into generative AI, what AI is, and actually meeting with students about it. Because what they're finding is their students are coming in, they've already gone and used, whether it's ChatGPT or whatever it may be, and they've got to almost do a course correction with them, literally, because it's just such a they're just so used to using it. And I'm going to get back to that in a minute. Let's see here. Where are we? Peer tutoring. So at Sault College about a year and a half ago, maybe, yeah, getting on 2 years ago, we started an AI committee consisting of academics, so including faculty, library quality assurance, student services, IT, and we made up an AI mandate. We had some great goals in the beginning, but this is kind of a story of the big projects we had. We were on the cusp of these big ideas and doing some things that I know my colleagues talked about we wanted to do. And then those in Ontario will know the ground shifted for us for funding, and everything just sort of stopped. And so we've had to move on that and sort of move an AI more individually instead of group or project work. So we're trying to get back on track with that. And there's been a lot of movement and changes within funding, et cetera, because all the colleges and universities, or almost all, are publicly funded in Ontario. So So what we've done here is the mandate is there and available and up on our student services website. And it's not a policy per se yet, but students can access it if they want to. And faculty, more importantly, to start them going on it. And I know some faculty that have actually really started looking into it, specifically Brian McDonald in our communication school, and Randy Martin, or Rodney Martin, I should say. So the college has also installed anti-AI software, like Turnitin. Actually, we're using Turnitin, but I asked the faculty what they thought of Turnitin, and most said it's good. It's not great, but with the caveat that don't think anything's great. There's finding problems with any software, and they're hearing on listservs, et cetera, that say a vendor or a competing vendor it's good on one end but not good on the other. So you're not going to find your answer in just one vendor. So let's see here. I'm just got to scroll down a little bit. So some roadblocks we've had, of course, we have the funding roadblocks and some shifts regarding programming, et cetera, and a lot of things happening here. The fluidity of technology, appropriate use, inappropriate use, moving parts is hard to embrace. So when I talk to faculty, they're struggling with trying to show them that this can be beneficial, but also you have to think about it properly. And they're doing that more individual in like meeting with faculty or students in their offices more so than in the class. But it is happening to a small extent now. It's starting to move up. And I've been very impressed with what I've seen through this conference on what everyone else is doing. We have a very, very small, we have 2,100 students, I should have mentioned, and I have a library staff of 5 library technicians, and I am the librarian and the director of many other things too. So it's hard for us to get a hold of everything and get everything done. But as one prof put it, the epidemic of academic integrity can't focus on the positives of AI. To many students, it's get me through to the end, get me through to finishing that paper, because we have to remember that these students are the students that came in our grade, what we call grade 9 here, I think. They started grade 9 in 2020. So they started their first year this past year, so the fall. And we're now looking and noticing a massive difference from those students who went through high school during the pandemic to now and coming into college. And I've talked to some other colleagues at universities and colleges in Canada about this, that they're not really ready. They really need some extra help. And because everything was just, I don't want to say this against any K-12 teacher in any way, because it's not, but they had to teach out of the blue online, and they had to learn out of the blue online, for which they've never done before, or most haven't. So it's been very hard for them and them to embrace AI, because they see AI as just another tool, not something that could be wrong or not the right way of doing things. But an interesting example I have here, and I mentioned this, I believe, at the Ontario Library Association conference, was a trade student was using AI, and they were using, and I'm just going to use trade like in welding. They're using AI to find regulations, and they found the regulations and thought it was great until they met with their prof, and they were using, I can't remember the state, but I think it was Indiana. I don't know, but it was a state's regulation, not the Ontario government's regulation. They didn't look at where it came from. And the prof talked to the student and everything, got everything corrected, because they needed to know the correct regulation. But that's the problem with going straight to AI. It's going to give you something that looks good, but the prof who'd worked in the field for years knew right away this wasn't Ontario regulation. So these are sort of things we're seeing in the community college in community college, I say trades to some degrees, are seeing our area is very different and vast in the sense of what we study and what we types of programs we have, and being a regional college to a remote area, those trades are really, really important. But then again, so are the Bachelor of Science in Nursing, because we need nurses massively. So these areas, we have to look at every single one of them, and it is hard to actually incorporate everything. So a future plan includes AI introduction in library. We just ended up doing what we are sort of normally do for library instruction this past year because there was just too many things going on. So you know, it changes so fast, it's hard to keep up. Interestingly, just 2 hours before this session, there was an email from Ovid about an AI in Ovid. And I thought that was really interesting and timely that we get, you know, those involved with the Ontario Library Resources Network for Nursing, including myself, see this email and it's like, wow, that's interesting. They sent it right before this, but you know, they're all starting to do this. So their AI is going to be better than EBSCO's AI, which is going to be better than ProQuest AI, et cetera. You know, and we really have to take time, all of us, and look at what this is doing. And is it, are there actually biases within this AI to only their material? It's one concern I have right away. So let's see here. Let's see. So that's really it, to be honest. It's we're finding that at Sault College, small college, serving a vast area, it's hard to actually, and for students that came in from COVID, and that's whether they came from Southern Ontario or the North, but especially the North, where you have a lot of students that came from all over, like Northern Ontario is bigger than Europe. And there are students that are in communities that are fly-in communities. You can only get there if you fly in. And their school library wasn't usually that well stocked, and they had to learn online. Wasn't always the easiest thing to do. And now they're coming in and saying, don't use what you used, even though they don't know the difference between AI and academic databases. So it's an, I don't know, Amy, any thoughts on that?
Do I have any thoughts on that? Yeah, Justin, how are we for time in terms of?
Yeah, it looks like we have 7 minutes. And besides that question, we have one more in the chat right now. So if you'd like to take that, and I can ask the question that was asked in the chat as well.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll just say quickly, I didn't mention it earlier, but I'm glad, Jason, that you talked about the sort of, the vendor offerings, because one aspect to what OCL is hoping to do with our capacity building is to help our those librarians and library staff at our member institutions who deal with with licensing and evaluating vendor products, is to sort of build capacity in terms of how to evaluate AI when it comes from a vendor. Like, what should we be looking at? Is there a way that you can, testing for bias, for example, like you were saying about, in terms of whether it's privileging or surfacing results that, from a vendor's own published works, and other things. And so collectively, one of the other things that OGL does collectively, most but not all of our members are part of a shared implementation of ALMA and Primo. And so we had the opportunity at a central level to, via one of our subcommittees, to actually test the Primo AI research assistant that was added by Ex Libris a little while ago. And so we were able to do that testing and disseminate it out to our member libraries, rather than having, each individual institution have to do its own testing. So I think it's both a really great example of something that we need to be looking at, and an area where I think everyone feels like they would like to have a bit more knowledge and understanding, as well as, in our case anyway, one successful test where we were able to do it centrally and share that information with our members. Having said that, of course, vendors are always changing their products. The Primo AI assistant I know has changed since it was evaluated. So I think an evergreen challenge is just keeping up with advances just generally in this technology space. Is moving so fast, and academic libraries do not move so fast. So what pace can we keep through that's reasonable in terms of trying to bring everyone kind of up to a level where at least they feel like they have the tools to be able to either do these assessments or for us to do them centrally. But if there's a question in the chat, I want to make sure that everybody else has a chance to answer it.
Yeah, great. It was, we find that librarians are not included in any AI conversations on our campus. Has anyone else experienced this? And I believe, Mindy, you had mentioned that you would like to answer that.
Yes, although I thank you, Justin and Amy, for putting in about your experiences. So what I was talking about is where we are now. Very much to Susan's point, that is not how it started out. Originally, when the groups were being formed, the library's expertise was viewed as being around the copyright issues, and it sort of stopped there. And there was a lot of, so I kind of like said, oh, but you should have this. And I kind of like pushed my way in a little bit into the original AI meeting group that was coming on, because I was like, I can add a different part to this. Then once they made the next groups, I noticed that we had our copyright person on the teaching and learning one and nobody on research. So again, I went to the provost, not the provost, to the provostial advisor, and I said, look, I think the library should also be on the research committee. And she said, well, just ask the chair. So I had to be more aggressive a little bit about it, because they weren't thinking about us at all in these things. And then after that, then we started to get a little bit more traction. But to Amy's point, that's only at like the sort of high admin level. At the level of the librarians, what I'm finding is it's very mixed depending on the discipline. There are disciplines where they do not want to talk about AI at all, not just like at all, and they're just ignoring it or hoping it will go away. And then, which is partly some of what Jason was saying in a way as well. They're just like, no, it's just one tool like any other. And then there's others where they're involving the librarians in a lot of classes and a lot of the conversations. So I think it's actually not uncommon for the AI conversations not to include the librarians and the libraries. And I think we have to, in some ways, if it's not happening and we see places where it should be happening, make sure that we're willing to sort of raise our voices and sort of say, hey, I think we do need to be at this dialogue. We have something to offer.
And usually, just to add to that, what I usually say too is that AI literacy is an extension of digital literacy. So this is our wheelhouse, this is our space. And sometimes we have to remind faculty and students of that, and administrators, unfortunately.
Just can I speak to Mindy and Janice's point? When I was asked by my VPA, Vice President Academic, to be on this new committee, she saw it as, you're the librarian, you're the director, you need to be there, right? When I got to the meeting, though, they saw me as the copyright guy, right? Even though her view was, no, you're the librarian. She wants copyright as a facet of that, but really more as a librarian. And because she highly values the library, and yay for us. And she's great and supports us. But I had to almost do my own internal law. And when I say internal, I mean internal lobbying within a committee to let them know, yeah, I do more than copyright. And so, because they always see me as the copyright guy, because it's one area my staff won't touch is copyright. They're busy doing other things in instruction, but it's not always simple, right? So I had support from the higher up, not from the actual faculty in the meeting. And it wasn't that they didn't want me there. It was that they just thought my position was lower level, right? And I had to let them know, talk to our boss. That's not. And they quickly found out that it wasn't. So it's yeah, interesting. There's a lot more questions coming up, though. I don't know, Justin, I'm not sure where we are.
We got 1 more minute, so we wanted to read off a comment or any concluding thoughts. That'd be great.
Oh, one from Thunder Bay. That's about 8 hours from Sault Ste. Marie. So That's about 18 hours from Toronto. Very small medical university, and I've been appointed library's AI expert, involved in institution-wide projects and representing the library. We created a policy for the AI learning teaching. I'm not included in curriculum discussions. I reviewed the timetable. My point to this, I can't read it fast enough here. Push yourself into those meetings. Get yourself into those meetings. Talk to the UL. I imagine you're talking about NOSM, Northern Ontario School of Medicine. And I would push yourself there because they need to know you're more than just copyright. You're a librarian, and more than just AI, even, because it's not just AI. You've got, like Amy has said, and I've said, we've got to start looking at the actual vendors and like looking at their bias and seeing whether they're actually, are they doing the right thing? It's like when you pick ProQuest over EBSCO and you leave EDS and go over to ProQuest, all of a sudden certain databases don't work. Surprise, surprise. So I won't get into that, but I'm sure Amy knows what I'm talking about. That's great. Digital AI literacy guide. That's awesome. Yeah, that's great that you have positions that are doing this. See some other people. I think that's amazing. That not all of us have that, size and amount of staff. So, Montreal, this is great. So a lot of people from Canada. This is wonderful.
Yeah, and I think it just reflects on the AI capacity for like libraries and how working together is something that I think we all need to do, as well as one of the takeaways I had was really advocating for ourselves, because that's the only way to really get it into the conversations and help shape those policies with our expertise.
Yeah. And
So I
this is
think,
relevant to anyone in the States too.
oh, absolutely. So looking at the time, I think that concludes. Again, just a couple reminders. First, let's thank the panelists for their expertise and insight into these projects. Additionally, they have their contact information on here as well. So Discord, we're doing a conversation there if you want to continue, but also feel free to email out. Thank you so much for your time, and it was a great presentation.
Thank you all very much for attending, and thanks, Justin, for managing us. And yeah.
Thanks for your patience with our IT issues.
So glad you were able to join, Jason. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.